Why do you coach? Yeah, we're very fortunate to have Chris Bateson with us today. Thank you, Chris, for being here again. So conventional wisdom, and I don't even know if this is old wives' tale or what it is, but I think Denise Dillon proved it wrong. You clearly proved it wrong. But, conventional wisdom is great players can't go on to be great coaches. But I think you talking about just a few minutes ago about how you're really interested in how things tick and what works for people and how people work. Probably answers the question, but why do you think that you're an anomaly for coaches, that you're special in that you could be a great player and a great coach? Or do you think that's really more of the norm than conventional wisdom thinks?
I'll push back on the premise. I was never a great player. I think I was a good player that worked really hard and knew his role. And, I take great pride in being a winner first and foremost. So, at Dartmouth, which was a good, lacrosse program, not great, I had a certain role there. But then, beyond college, as I evolved to play for the Wings and play on club teams, I just was always trying to find my role.
Right.
So I was never...
But you were a professional player, right?
So, your point's well taken. But, so yes, but I think, being around players who I, really respected, who were superstars, some of the best players... some of the best players who will ever play the game, like, were teammates. And I'm like,
right.
Okay. So seeing how they go about their business, but then seeing people assume roles in different ways, I think just gets your brain working about what makes a team really run.
Right.
And we can talk about, my experience playing for the Wings back in the day where, we had Gary Gate and Paul Gate and Tom Marichek and Kevin Finner, like the best players in the world at that point. But the core of that team were what we call grinders, guys who assumed different roles, guys who had been stars. Now we're taking on different roles. Billy Miller, Paul Denikin, John McAvoy, John Nostramp, Brian Volker. I can like those guys I will always remember because they were superstars. So to answer your question, I think you're always, as a coach, from an athlete standpoint, transitioning to be a coach, like you got to go climb the mountain and figure out how you're going to do it. And it's not, for me, it was never like, watch how I did it, Right. To some degree, it's like, here's some intangibles that I think can help you as a player. But, I try to find each guy's strength and help them develop their own games and then put the pieces together in units, if that makes sense. And being a good player helps along those lines. But, you got to go climb the mountain and figure out all the other stuff we've talked about to be a good one. And as a great player, not me, sometimes you can see those shortcuts and how you're not going to be a successful coach.
But what I love in your role with the Archers, right? GM, selecting players and everything, you're picking players who need to now evolve into, most of them are going to be a role player. It's like where they're coming from probably a star, best player type of situation. And you've been, pretty successful in your drafts. And in some ways, probably a little unique, I think some people in the lacrosse world would argue. Talk about what do you identify in those quote unquote star players, for argument's sake, we'll call it that you see them, they can accept a role. Is that...
No, it's a great. The draft is different than college recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about that.
Yeah, we do
differently, but from a professional standpoint, there's math involved, and what I mean by that is you have a draft pick at some point in the draft,
mm-hmm.
and what's out there, so you've got to sort of game. And I think we've done a really good job of knowing the bigger pool and what other teams' needs might be. So then we get into this group of, here's who's going to be in our mix.
Mm-hmm.
Like here at pick 14 or pick 12, like we need a goalie at pick 12. okay, who's going to be there? What's that going to look like? Boom. And you can get really good at hyper-focusing on that, I think.
Okay.
And then saying, all right, here's who's going to be here. Let me now, dig deep to figure out who the best one is. And part of that is listening again. I can look at all of our best draft picks, and there are moments where somebody I trust, you see what you see with your eyes, you know what you need within your group, and then you need to know that they're going to fit and what makes them tick to some degree. And a half-hour conversation is not necessarily going to do it. You can ask questions and be pointed and interview them, but the people that live with them day in, day out, I can remember we drafted Brett Dobson, 12th, from St. Bonaventure.
Yep.
How many lacrosse players are coming from St. Bonnie's?
No offense to St. Bonnie's, but
no, like the St. Bonnie's would say the St. Bonnie's doesn't, this dude, Dauber saw a ton of rubber and was gifted, was a young Canadian dude who was going to be in the pipeline. You learned about his background in the game. And then Randy Mearns, who was a guy who was his coach.
Yep.
Mearns had, I played against in the 90s in the indoor league, and he's in the Canadian system of being one of the head coaches. And he said to me, he's like, this dude is going to be an all-star and an MVP in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's my guy.
Yeah.
There's my guy. But again, the piece of it is knowing those guys, you have to let them breathe. And the best thing that Tom and our players do is when you come in, and he does this, not me, and I will give him all the credit in the world. You be you when you get here. You're here for a reason. Don't take a back seat. Play your game. And that gives people the freedom to go make mistakes. And it's unique. I know that doesn't happen everywhere, and I'm lucky for it. But that sets the tone for when you join our team. You're here for a reason. Look at Sam King last year. Mm-hmm. Harvard kid, Tewaaraton finalist, drops to 18. I was amazed. And, this dude came in and didn't back down from day one.
Yeah.
But it was our best offensive player.
Yeah.
So he assumed a role to start and was deferential where need be, but it was also, he was given the freedom to go play, go get to the front of the net, go make plays, and he delivered.
Are there traits, though, that you're specifically looking for? Or that you're off the table? I mean, is there something, we talk a lot about emotional skills, right? Breaking down what are your emotional traits, self-awareness, leadership, empathy, competitiveness, and, a bunch of them. Are there certain ones that it's like, nope, that's number one. If he doesn't have that, I'm not taking him.
I mean, there's the dog mentality of you just need a dude that is going to compete.
Yep.
And that's a non-negotiable. At that level, I'm not going to say it's a given because some dudes wash out and they're just not it.
Yep.
Each subsequent level that you're trying to compete in, demands a greater level of talent and FU.
Yeah.
So that, and I think being self-aware and being humble and trying to figure out how you fit in, if it's a healthy organization, that process is easier. If it's not, that's where you just see friction. And, but that competitiveness is number one to me to some degree.
I don't want to say gotten overruled with your assistants, because you have really, like, as you said, you surround yourself with pretty great people, coaches, leaders themselves. Have you been swayed, or are you guys a lot of times on the same page?
No, I hear them, and I can make decisions that I think are right, that I can tell that they're because there are themes. If you keep your ear down, there are personalities that, my assistant now will say about a guy on my team now, he not your kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I get that in some regard. So you have to listen. And I think it does impact decision making as you go forward.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to, again, I'm lucky. I mentioned Tony again.
He's pretty elite.
Yes, he's got fingers on all the fingers.
Yeah.
Or rings on all the fingers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally.
So you talk about how, as a general manager and a head coach of a professional team, you're lucky. I don't know what word you use, but you're lucky enough to have people on there that are super competitive. You're all those kind of it just dog mentality. All that stuff is built in, and you select them based on that. At St. Andrews, you didn't get to pick your players, right? And I would imagine you have a full spectrum there. And if I'm wrong about anything, correct me. So what are some of the things that you do for the players at St. Andrews that you have learned in the pros? You profiled the pros. You know what you're looking for in pros. What do you do to help the players at St. Andrews become more like pros? And not necessarily just in lacrosse, but in their lives.
No, I appreciate that question because that's why I'm there now. That's what I enjoy doing. It's a unique environment to do kind of what I love, and that's be an educator and a coach. And you have to meet kids. You meet kids where they are, right, and understand who they are and what motivates them. It starts with dialogue, I think. As I said, I walk around campus and I'm an easy read. I'm not complicated. Like, this is who I am. Like, so with that, I think the relationships can start because if a kid wants to try it, he understands kind of what some of the baseline expectations are. But we do a thing with any kid that wants it, an individual development plan, IDP.
Oh, really?
So if Nick Gannon comes in and he says, I have goals, or I want to at least start the conversation. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, pull up my screen. Nick Gannon, IDP. What are your goals, Nick? Just talk. And I'll sit and I'll just, it's not perfect. It's not bullet pointed yet, but like, okay, these are your goals. Like, okay, all right. Well, okay, like that makes sense. Like, what do you think you have to do to achieve those goals? Like, what does that look like? You come up with the answers. You figure
not a straight line.
Yeah, you figure it out. I had a kid come in the other day, and I won't say his name in case he listens to this, but he comes in.
Well, I hope he does.
And he sits down and he goes, I'm ready for my IDP. And I go, all right, well, what brings you here? Whatever I said. He goes, my mom thinks that, lacrosse can help get me into a better college. And I literally said, get up, walk out of the door, like get out of my office and walk back in and rethink how you're going to start this meeting. It was awesome. I loved it. I'm like, and the kid was like, oh, he's right. Like, but
we got it instantly.
How could you not? Like, that's the baseball bat over the head. Like, he doesn't get it. Trust me. Like this, I'm not sure he'll ever get it. I love the kid, but point being was like, okay, here's lesson number one. Like,
right.
Do you want this, or does this is this somebody else's dream, somebody else's goal? So I think, meeting kids, and this is, so from a high school standpoint, it's just, and I have Division I kids. I have two Division I seniors right now. I have a kid just committed to Harvard, like big time kids. That freshman, I'll always be very proud. Like, he came to me and he's like, Coach, I want to do an ID. We sat outside the squash court. What are your goals? I want to be a Division I lacrosse player. Okay. And this kid's wired the right way and just gave him a little bit of structure and he did it. Wow. But then there's kids who, I have a kid who, is a senior coming out we've had great luck with basketball players, who I'm like, if you could just pass and catch a little bit, like, you can be a good lacrosse player. Yeah. You have an IQ. You're tough. We've had two seniors, or a senior in the last 2 years, who has become an all-league player. Never having played before senior year. Like, it's Delaware lacrosse, so I'll it's not like, there's some room to, grow quickly, but like to the point, like, get on here's the wall, here's the skills, here's the, and then let your athleticism take over. But that's the fun part. Like, that's what I enjoy doing. Like, right. We have a senior, we were going to have a third kid in a row. I told the kid, I'm like, I've watched you play football. I've watched you compete. He's on the wall every single day. And if he's not all league, I will buy you guys lunch. I promise you. Like, the kid's just,
we'll buy you lunch anyway for coming on the show.
Fair enough.
But so, is that a Chris Bates thing, the IDP? Is that your school?
That's just something that was an idea.
You come out of IEP?
Maybe.
What's that stand for?
Individual Education Plan. It's a,
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, this is just something that is clearly individualized. So it's just it's a blank slate, and this is about you. So frankly, I don't know where that idea came from, but it's something that is continued.
You've been doing it a long time.
Yeah, and I love how some colleagues, like the girls coach at Episcopal, who I have a ton of respect for, she now does it So people around me, like,
I love it.
yeah, it's just very cool. And I say like it evolves. Like, this is what it is in ninth grade. I said, this word vomit, now we need to put some shape into it. And then let's revisit it.
Yeah.
This needs to be better. And I'll put, this one senior, so it's a shared doc, it's a Google doc. So we both can see it, access it. And on the bottom, I'm like, in our meeting, he talked about, I forget the term he used, how he's relatable. And this kid is tough and he works hard and he's not the greatest lacrosse player. But I'm like just lead by example, question mark, just push you down the line of you're now a senior. Now this is your time to evolve as a leader. Like you do have more value than you think you do.
Uh-huh.
And you're going to be asked to be a role model and have a voice, and you are ready for this.
Yeah. I love that. In our conversation with Denise,
go to Episcopal.
In our conversation with Denise Dillon, she didn't do an IDP, but her version of it was I'm going to ask the kid, what do they want to be? Good, great,
Right.
And then it was, okay, we're going to write it down. And then in her eyes, she knew how she could coach them. Like, do they have the aspiration to be great? And I know, okay, and when they say, and when I'm too hard on them, do you want to be great? I mean, that's what you said. So just that interesting, like they own it. Same to the point of the team core values and everything. There's the buy-in because they're coming, they're telling you, and then you're just like, okay, you're going to shape it. Like you said, you're going to massage it. And, some of them in this case are ninth graders. Like they don't know. I mean, so, pretty cool. That's a pretty cool lesson. No, it's a really cool thing to share.
I will be stealing that.
What are your blind spots? What do you need to catch yourself or have your assistants catch you on that, it's just like, or your wife, or
that's a pretty close to a gotcha question.
A little bit. I got an answer though. I
mean, I think it's like, what are the self-talk that's just like, hey, I can get emotional. I mean, I can get, too competitive.
I caught myself last year. It was a game. There's 3 fans and it's, this poor official's like 79 years old and like just makes and I'm like, I'm losing my mind. And I'm like, oh gosh, like I'd be embarrassed if I was looking at myself.
Put a camera on you.
Yeah, we had a playoff game, we won it, and I yell at the girl and like who's doing the clock. I'm like, I got to be better than that. And I have a great AD who was a former women's soccer coach at WNL, so he's kind of my RR or whatever. And I had to go back and tell him like, you're gonna hear about this, like because you get written up and the whole deal. And he just looked at me. He's like, mate, because he's well, he's like, hey, mate, like. But he had totally had my back, and he just sort of appreciated it, and then just looked at me, like, because he knew. I'm like, I got it.
Yeah, you're apologizing.
So even now, I'm like, even in PLL sidelines, like, there's times I'm like, I just have to learn that there's no value there. Like, I'm not changing it. So yeah, the competitiveness, like, I can't help myself.
Yeah.
As a third team basketball coach the other day, this kid starts giving me lip, and I'm like, I'm ready to strangle this kid. He's like. He's a pretty good basketball player. He's never been coached in his life, and I'm trying, and he's not listening. He's fighting me. I'm like, I'm ready to strangle this kid. Literally, I'm like, all right, take it easy.
How about not even as, that's emotional, right? But are there things that you do X's and O or game management stuff that you have to, like Tony or who, you have to tell me. I typically forget that, or I have forgotten. Is there
totally? And I'm better at preparing ahead of time. So like on the road, I need my time because I'm not gifted. I'm not a gifted orator. I'm not I know my limits and I need to be prepared. And from a game management standpoint, I need to prepare adjustments. I'm not, guys would make fun of me because in game, like I'm drawing stuff and it makes sense to me. And they look at it, they're like, wouldn't like, so I do it on
I've seen your scratch.
Yeah, I do it on an iPad ahead of time. I'm like, So I know my strengths and weaknesses. There are cues that I put on my game sheet that remind me of things that I need to be reminded of at times. Tony will kick me, like, there are times I believe in our team, and he's like, time out, please. And I'm like, time out, like, all right, I got it. So, there's just certain things. And that's, if you have a good working relationship and you trust each other, like, that's helpful. So, again, listening, but yeah, I've evolved to be better prepared for those circumstances.
Yeah.
That's part of my maturation is because otherwise I get frustrated and I realize I'm more frustrated myself.
Yeah.
In some regard that I didn't do a good enough job in that huddle. And I'm like, so I've tried to make progress in terms of being organized, being a good communicator, and giving them what they need to be successful. That's my job.
We'll be right back to the Nick Anthony Show.
Today's show is brought to you by the free film available on YouTube, A Dream Plus a Plan. Learn what it takes to accomplish your dream, whatever your dream is. Go to www.adreamplusaplan.com, adreamplusaplan.com.
Welcome back to the Nick Anthony Show.
I mean, I think it's one of the hardest. I mean, it is the hardest thing you do is communicate. I mean, and you know, control your. I mean, emotions and and that competitiveness, it clouds your thinking too. I mean, like you're not going to make the best decisions. You're not going to be able to draw the best play or call the timeout because you're fixated. So I mean, I appreciate that.
So I'm going to go back a little bit farther. So you talk about some of these lessons you've learned about yourself as you've been a coach, as you've evolved as a coach. What are some of the things that you thought as a player, right? Because you were a pro player, you played college, all like a very high level, that you thought you knew, and you became a coach, and your perspective changed. Is there anything where it's like,
I think the biggest one is self-evident in some ways, but the how the sausage is made, how the decisions are made, what's needed in the background to get a team to play together, and you don't realize, the value of relationships and of how you construct a lineup or a roster. And I give Tony a ton of credit, Resh, who was a teammate, but then coached us when we played for the Wings, and it was that sort of having your ear down and understanding where your players are coming from. And as a player, you're like, just put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. Like, this is draw up this play, or whatever the strategy is, or so for me, it just was pulling the lens back and appreciating that, because that takes time.
Right.
That transition takes time. Right. As a player, to your point, but I was lucky to play on, as I said earlier, some not great teams that would frustrate me because I could see the leadership was not great, or the buy-in was not great, or we're not all on the same page. And then I was on a couple really good teams with good teammates and good players, and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is how it's supposed to look.
Right. So we've talked a lot about goal setting on this show. What do you do so that your team is all on the same page? Are there how do you do that? I mean, you can talk about St. Andrews, you can talk about the pros, you can talk about anything in between, any of your experiences. What are just some tips you have for our audience about how to get a team on the same page?
I mean, this is a really, we say things at this age where people I always say you have to dial your compass. You have to have a north, you have to know where you're going, and I have to have a picture of what that looks like. And then you have to back it out. If we're starting here and want to get here, a lot of time, a lot of things you have to cover. And I've learned to be patient with that. It doesn't happen overnight. And just the time that it takes to actually enact creating individual relationships and creating units and I always the term unit to me, I read a book called Unity at one time, and it just always struck me like that term, that sort of togetherness, that idea of a team defense, a team offense, how you ride, how you clear, it's all, except for saving the damn ball. You need a good defense in front of you. That's the position that we just need somebody to stop it. But I just think going back to keep going back to the, here's who we are, here's where we're going, here's how we're going to get there. So I think there's some, reminders that you need, but it as a coach, you have to know what's feasible and then create a plan and a picture so that people, I think, buy into that, understand that, and understand their setbacks, and understand that, geez, we didn't know he was going to get hurt, or we didn't know this was going to happen. And kind of, so it's never that straight line, and you have to, be prepared for the variability that happens. But I think you have to be crystal clear in terms of who you are, where you think you can go, and what that looks like.
Right.
you're a parent, and but I guess probably two questions related to. I mean, there's probably a lot, but two that I'll stay on is how has being a career coach, how did that affect the way you watched your kids? And then also you had the ability, or you were fortunate, I think, to have coached your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about, from the sidelines as a coach when you're watching your kids play for other coaches. And then
my two examples about being a dad, like I saw a great TED Talk that was about being to this point, like what does it take to be a good parent to a kid who's playing youth sports? And lesson number one is don't talk about it in the car ride home. Don't talk about just don't.
Yeah.
Pick your time. It's emotional at that point. It's not about you. And I enjoyed watching you play today. Mm-hmm. And I just was disciplined with Nick, who it's not easy.
Yep.
Like I'm wired how I'm wired. I'm a coach how I'm a coach. Like it could not have been easy for him to find his own way as an athlete. And I just would say to him, like, man, I just loved watching you play. Like, and I was,
and you were conscious. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was disciplined with it, except the one time where the poor kid, like, he kind of cheap shotted somebody or did something, and he just didn't play hard. And and we got in the back seat. I'm like, listen, like, I normally, like, me, I normally tell you that, like, but I am not driving you to one more game if you play like that again. Like, I will not do it.
How old was he?
Yeah, middle school. Okay. Right. But enough where it was like, if you're going to do this and we're going to sacrifice time, like, that ain't it.
I had the exact same situation with Carly. Go ahead.
And you have to come to terms with that. And I always thought, like, I want him to just love the game.
Yep.
I want him to enjoy whatever he's playing and just play freely and compete and work hard. So I didn't want to offer, unless he asked. I said, and that's how I approached it also. I'm like, you want my opinion, you have to ask.
Yep.
And I thought that was healthy. When he went to college, I could not have looked forward to anything more. Him and Charlie, and scheduling my Saturdays to drive to Williams or Lafayette was total highlight. Like, because my parents went to every one of my games, and it just was a family value. And parents, inevitably parents are like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't think anything. I'm dad. I am not coach here. Like, I want to be off by myself. I want to enjoy it. I want to be frustrated by it, but I just want to, and I was frustrated at times. Mm-hmm. My son was a second line midfielder, in the NESCAC, which 4,000, it's 3 degrees out, and he doesn't play to the second half. I'm like, how do you think he's going to, like, you got to play him earlier if you want. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't put him in the second half. So I had frustrations watching coaches coach, but total, I was never going to not respect a coach's decision. I had my own opinions about how they ran their offense and what they did. And I found a couple parents where I could, give a little of my, like, but drawing that line was important to me.
Yeah. How about coaching them?
It was a highlight of my coaching career.
Yeah.
Just to be around them and just to, I wanted them to, like, this is who I am really then. High school. So when we merged families, both boys came to Episcopal in 9th grade. And that was like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. Like, I don't want to be a college coach anymore, and having the opportunity to go to a great place like Episcopal and coach my boys from 9th grade on, like, the career highlight. Right. Just sharing the time with them and coaching them differently. And, like, poor Nick would fight me a little bit more, and Charlie was different. So building the relationships, with them in a very different way it's challenging, right. And I think we survived pretty well, and I think they understood me differently because of seeing me through the lens of actually coaching. Nick was always around me at Princeton, so he knew and heard. I'm like, don't repeat that word, try still to be a parent, like, that was for effect, like, time and place.
Did you draw on your 9th grade Spanish class? I mean, when you were coaching them?
A little bit. Like, you're no different. Like, you're going to be held to the same standard. And so it was fun. And I think our relationship grew as a result. And, then just as a coach, seeing them go off to play in college and be, realize their successes and have some of their dreams accomplished was just fun to be a part of it.
Yeah. You have different I don't want to say rules or just philosophies as a college coach dealing with parents as a high school, and what are the how you handle them differently, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the college thing was unique. They're part, it's through the recruiting process. It's through how you communicate with them. I can remember, Jim Avato and the Avatos coming in, just bring somebody, and I remember telling Dad, I'm like, I would love to have your kid here. Like, this shoot 9.5. Yeah. And he's looking at me, I'm like, when it needs to go near your son's butt crack, I am going to do that.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and he's like, good, that's what I'm looking for. I'm like, okay, this is going to go well.
Yeah.
This is now, and that is like somebody who I always have a ton of respect for.
Yeah.
But in college, there's a clear delineation of what's acceptable communication, and you have to say that. That's a Kevin Corrigan thing that I learned.
100%.
Like, if grandma dies or there's mental health issues or there's something, like, we're partners here, I'm here. If it's about playing time, non-starter. And that's just, you can't go there. I did listen to, remember Matt Slotman?
Yeah.
His dad's like, he should, like, he was a bench warmer, and he's like, he's played this kid for Delaware. Yep, he can play him, and that's where that kid's career. So I listened to that advice, but generally no. I mean, in high school it's different. High school's
how's that?
It's it's really that much more of a. I think they appreciate it, and I try to fully disclose, like, here's who we are, here's what we're asking them, and I think they just love that role and that structure and realize the importance. College parents are like, it's a different deal.
Mm-hmm.
They're wired differently. They've come through the club thing and they have expectations. They're living vicariously through their kid, which is never a good thing.
Yeah.
I sat on the sidelines and heard it. I realized what parents and who parents are like. So keeping them at arm's length is smart, but also within the spirit of partnership. And I think that's important.
So I think you've talked about a lot of things, but your breadth, sorry, I didn't ask it very well, but let me get this out. So your spectrum of experiences and perspectives is amazing. Again, everywhere from a professional GM, professional coach, college, very high-level college, high-level high school, and all that, as well as parent, coach, everything, right? So you've talked about a lot of universal truths today, I think, from the IDP to whatever. Those apply, the goal setting, everything you do, I think, applies to all those levels. Is there anything else that you haven't mentioned today that you can tell our audience that applies to everything across the board? Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, to me, like, philosophically, what's always been important is, and I don't think it's unique to lacrosse, although we have sort of this language that we use around it, but honoring the game. I do genuinely believe that there's a way to play a game. It could be basketball, it could be anything, and there's
Water polo.
whatever it is. I know nothing about water polo, but there's a history to water polo, and
there is.
There are people who have developed over time, and I think ultimately it's always been important for me, and I do it with my St. Andrews guys. I'm like, we play a game of Bagataway every year. Like, we play it. We play for art. I'll explain in a second. But I'm sorry, I don't know. Sorry. We play it with the Archers too. We played it in Harvard Stadium this year, and it's the Native American form of the game. Yeah, the goals are there. They're spread out. There's your people are in barefoot. We play Native American music, and so I think in any sport that translates, like, just honoring what the game, like, the people who have played this and it's something I don't compromise on in some ways in terms of how you play. But I think understanding what the history of the game is, the medicine game, the creator game, all that, at least for lacrosse, has always been, for me, important and a universal truth. That and fundamental development. Like, that's the one that also, to me, when I think about, teaching and coaching, like, that's what's going to serve you well. Having a fundamental, it's in business, it's in anything. If you have a fundamental grounding and principles around that, I think that just allows for wherever you're going to go.
Right. It's great.
What are you most proud of when you finally hang them up at some point? What are like, when you look back, even now? I mean, not when you hang it up, but what are you most proud of when you look at your career? I mean, I think you probably personally have some things but like from a career and coaching standpoint, and maybe they intertwine.
Yeah, no, man, there are two things that are that come to mind for me. One are, like, every one of the firsts that you have is memorable to me. Like, I look back at early coaching days and Drexel days, and every one of those firsts like just created a belief. You talked about Jed Salter being in the North-South game or Jake Bunning being in the North-South game for the first time. Like, that creates belief in a program, in an individual. I can remember beating Delaware for the first time. I know Dennis Fink spoke at Kavanaugh's that day, and we beat them for the first time in 23 years. Beat Towson for the first time in 27 years. Beat Villanova. Like, I can go through every one of those things. The Virginia win, like calling you from the locker room. Like, we just beat Virginia.
Just got chills.
Yeah,
I recall that moment. I was getting off a plane.
Yeah,
like I was with basketball. Unfortunately,
those moments are like, to me, winning a championship with like that. The video, if I showed you of of the water being poured on me with like memorable. So all those things resonate and stick. But like the most, when I see Jesse Rumble with his kids, and just when you have those relationships and you realize you had that impact, like, that's it.
Yeah,
that's
former weddings, right? I mean,
I went to Ryan Ambler's wedding.
Yeah,
there were 40 people there, right? And I'm at the head table.
Yeah,
and I realized, like, I'm sitting across from his parents and her parents and tribes and Cav. I'm like, Melissa and I looked at each other like, there are 6 adults in this room, and we are 2 of them. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
And I remember Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
I know the moment I met Ryan.
Yeah.
And had a football catch with him watching his brother. So when you fast forward and you look at a career and you look at those relationships, like, that's what honors me.
Yeah.
Coaches, Joe Seglia, Craig Raymond, Jim Regalsk, like, every assistant coach, like, to have had an impact and a relationship with people at that moment. And then when it carries on forevermore in their lifelong relationships, like, it's my life.
Yeah.
Well lived.
Yeah. Agreed.
Wow. Chris, this has been awesome today. Thank you so much.
Fun.
A ton out of this.
I've said this before. I'll say we reserve the right to bring you back.
I mean,
I don't think I have anything else.
That's all I got.
The gas tank is filled. Like, I'm dropping the mic. I'm out.
all this blue stuff is questions for the next time.
Yeah. No, but thanks sincerely. This means a lot to us. And I mean, I no, you and I over years, we know we line up a lot of things together. But I think it's awesome to hear how you articulate it and what you're about and all the advice and lessons that you have to offer. So appreciate you coming in.
Well, I'll just say I love listening to you guys because I love the interaction, but it's what you're doing has great value. And, hearing you behind the mic, finding your groove a little bit is, it's fun. You guys do a really good job. So it's cool to share this time. I appreciate it. It's been fun. So
thank you very much for being here. Thanks for being part of this. All right.
Epilogue.
So, Nick, it's been a couple weeks since Chris was on, but I got to tell you, his content has lived with me. And I think, we're hoping that our show helps others. Well, having him on helped me.
Yeah.
Even with my own kids who are
no doubt
athletically, right? It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Right? So
let's hear it. I want to hear what you got to say.
Well, I mean, my big takeaway, because I was going back through my notes and trying to summarize, how I am, right? I identify patterns and all that kind of stuff. And what I came up with is, it's almost like a tagline. It sounds really weird, but it's like a Chris Bates tagline. And it's like, he goes the shortest route by never taking a shortcut.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Right?
That's deep.
It's a long
deep.
tagline.
Holy cow.
Well, it's a long tagline.
Okay.
But bear with me. So we've talked before about how the shortest distance between 2 people is never a straight line, right?
Yeah.
If you think about all the stuff he does, he allows his players to have the freedom to make mistakes.
Yep.
Right? He does the IDP thing, right? The individual development plan, right? That takes a long time. He takes input from his assistants during games.
Yep.
Right? Then he also he thinks he's high preparedness because he knows that that's the way he has to work. So he's high preparedness all the time. That's, again, the long route, right? But then he also, when he talked about how he and his team created that badge, right?
Yep.
Again, it's been a couple weeks for us, not for our audience. Hopefully they'll know what badges.
Yeah.
But the badge thing, right? The way he did that, right? That was not a shortcut.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, if you look at all 5 of those things, he took the long route between people, but it was the most effective route, and it was the shortest route to accomplish what he wanted to do, right? You think about how many people, like, they do a shortcut and they end up spending more time on something because everything messes up.
No, 100%.
So again, I just love having him on the show.
Yeah, his passion for what he does is so evident. Right. And I love that he looks at his job or his profession as a coach, as an educator, right? And whether it was, not letting people get away, not letting his players or his kids get away with something. And when I say get away, it's probably a little harsh, but don't touch the line. And it's the details matter because it sets the tone for what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, right? Being late for the meeting and having the kid oh no, there's an accountability for being late for this, right?
No shortcut.
No shortcut. Yeah. I mean,
allow his players to take shortcuts.
And to relate it back to a Denise Dillon conversation that we had, it was having real-time conversations. He doesn't necessarily use that term the way Denise did, but I love that. The individual development plan, I think, is just brilliant from, again, relating to the educator. Right. The knowing your weakness, I think, whether it's how emotional he can get, or whether it's he has terrible handwriting and terrible scratch, and so he knows I got to draw the plays ahead of time.
Right.
I love that. I love that as a takeaway for a coach, not necessarily specific to that problem because not everyone has his chicken scratch handwriting, but they have other things that maybe they need to look into and be prepared for. As kind of as you said, I loved when celebrating the firsts. And how what he is so proud of is the firsts, and whether it was the first time he beat a team in school history or the first time he had an individual get a certain honor. Right. I love that because that's where his memories are, and it relates. His memories are about people, and coaching is about the relationships, the people, all that stuff. I love that, and one thing that I think was a little hidden in what he said was that how he looks at players, athletes, and what they can do, and when he talks about seeing a basketball player who's never played lacrosse, but he sees, what they could do on a lacrosse field, right, and then gets them into lacrosse in his, in this instance, and because of the skills and emotionally and physically, he'll teach them the knowledge, but the emotional and the physical will work in this sport, in this position, or this role. I loved that. I think oftentimes, especially coaches, when they, in college, when you recruit somebody, it's like you see what they can do. And then you get to college and then they get on your team and then you start seeing what they can't do. And then you're instead of going back to what they can do, or even evaluating what they can do, like you really can do. So I love that. So, and then I just have always admired his values. He's value-based, he's authentic, he is who he is, and he goes back to his core values. So I took a lot out of the conversation that frankly, some of it I knew ahead of time, and a lot of it we didn't. So great conversation, excited to see what he does in his two areas or two teams that he's working with, and hopefully at some point we'll get him back. But it was a lot of takeaways in that one. Right.
No, and I should have mentioned that. Just the fact that the breadth of his experience everywhere from high school to Princeton to pros. I mean, and being a GM and a coach, it was just a great conversation. I really thank you very much for having him.
I'm really good at that. No, I'm just kidding.
You are good at that.
It's all right.
Anyway, thanks for having him.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. We want to hear from you with your questions and comments. You can find us at thenickanthonyshow.com and our social media handles, which you can find in our description.